All right, so today I'm going to do our first workshop, our first worksheet, which all you have to do is message and I'll gladly send it to you. It'll be attached to the video in some way, shape, or form, or you can reach out directly and I'll get you one. But pretty much the first worksheet is going to be the story of you, the origin of your rules. The quality of your life is in direct proportion to your thoughts and how you live your life. So if you don't take any time to think about your thoughts, because it's all just a pattern. Your life is a pattern. So today we're going to start with one of the big questions I want you to think about first is, who are you? What are some of your core values? What is your identity? People never go against their identity. So if somebody says, I'm not a smoker, that's very different than I might smoke if I have a couple drinks. I'm not, or I am a runner, is very different than I run 2 times a year. So what you believe about yourself is your reality. So we kind of have to dive a little deep, and this one takes a little bit of vulnerability. But I want you to think about when you were a child, who did you want to be? What did that adult version of you look like? Because this is where you started to compile your roles. You started to put together your expectations for your life as a kid. And you do it indirectly usually. Usually it's family members or friends or whatever. You just pick up these little tidbits, and before you know it, it becomes a rule for you. So when you wanted to be a child, what did you want to do? So for me, I wanted to be a doctor. I was told by my well-intending parents, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that one, that I should be a doctor. And when I think about why I wanted to be a doctor, I wanted to be a doctor so that I could help people, that I could make a lot of money, and that I would be respected. And these were all things that as a kid I thought, all right, if I have these things, then my life will be perfect. I won't be struggling. I won't be suffering. I'll be able to take care of my family, and I could still help people because I really do love to help people. I want to help people. So stop and think, when you were a kid, what did you want to be? So a lot of people I've worked this exercise with will say, well, I wanted to be a sports person. And that's a real common one. And that's good, because that is, our society really does push kids into that. I mean, we pay how much money just for, football games and soccer and whatever. So I would dive a little deeper into that as to what were the attributes. Was that something that you enjoyed physically? You enjoyed being a physical person. You enjoyed the physical activity of it. Or did you enjoy the time spent with your peers? Did you enjoy the reassurance and the support your parents gave you? Or the significance of it? Was it time that you specifically spent with your dad? Or your mom, or your grandmother, or whatever. So dive a little deeper into what feelings you wanted out of that choice. So with that being said, when you think about this identity that you were starting to form, what attributes did that person have? So when I think of little Jessie, in my mind, when I was a little girl, I would think that doctors were kind, that they were really smart, that they were able to help people, and that they had money. And that, in my mind, that meant less suffering. So it was one of those things as a kid that I just put all of that together, and that's what I wanted to be. So when I graduated high school at 17, because I started kindergarten at 4, because as my mom would say, I was too damn tall. She had to start me early, so I wouldn't be a circus freak, because that's just kind of the support you get when you grew up in the 80s. But with that being said, I wanted to have all of these attributes of somebody who helped the world, that was helpful. So when you think about yours, it's not right, it's not wrong. Just kind of dive a little deep. And if you are having a hard time with it, you can message, and I'll do my best to get back and help people with some follow up. So part of that is, what other identity related choices did you make? So typically in high school. So if we think about high school, I hung out with the freaks. And I was proud to be hanging out with green haired people who didn't fit in. I would yell at the jocks if they were spitting at somebody. Um, I Part of my identity was that I didn't mind being outcast, and I got some significance from it, if I'm honest. So where did you find your significance in high school? Like some people, you can get a title. I was kind of like, I was the hippie freak though. I had long curly hair, and yeah, I hung out with the punks and the misfits and people who just really didn't feel like we fit in, but we were our own clique. So part of that becomes part of your how you approach things too. Were you quiet? Were you shy? Were you considered a geek? What were you considered in high school? Did that become part of your identity? And is that true though? Like sometimes somebody will label somebody in high school as trash or whatever. Like I remember being spit at in high school. And some parts of me did kind of carry some of that into my adult life, thinking, all right, well, I'm not worthy. I have to prove myself, different things that at 48, I can go back and look and be like, all right, none of that was true. That was somebody who was trying to figure out their own identity. And I'm not upset at those people. They were doing the best they could too. I don't know what their home lives were like. I don't know. They were just trying to fit in with the group they were in. But it's one of those things where you want to look at the good and the bad. You want to look at these thoughts that ultimately your reality is the thoughts that you have. And a lot of these rules that you've put onto yourself, this pattern of your thought process, you can change. So when I was growing up, it was there was a lot of talk that we were cursed, that it was my maiden name's curse. And I never embodied that. With that being said, I think it's a lot of where you get to make choices. So even as a kid, I would almost like secretly be optimistic to myself, just because there was a lot of bad going on. So it was one of those things where I had to have an internal world of my identity. So when you get into it, like think about some big things that went on in your life between 5 and 25. And usually for most people, it is who your friend groups were, who betrayed you, like all of these things, the origin of your roles. You have to know where you started, because that sets the trajectory. So if you're over, if you're mid-20s, you are already settling into a lot of your roles and a lot of your comforts. So did you live up to your parents' expectation? Did you go get that bachelor's degree? Did you go get, are you working towards your master's, or are you getting your doctorate? Did you want any of that to even begin with? Or did you want a feeling that you thought that was going to give you? Was it a feeling of how much money? Could you make that much money doing something else? There's a whole wave of people with degrees right now that are unemployed. So you have to think, what was some of the things I thought were just going to keep me safe? But ultimately, what's the identity that's deeper than just these titles that our society puts on ourselves? So one of the last questions on this topic is, how did you choose? What were the choices that shaped your expectations? Specifically, I want you to think about your lifestyle, your behaviors. So I could think of so many people who live in anger, or they live in anxiety. There's very few people who live in happiness. So what behavior patterns did you settle into? And what lifestyle are you currently in? You know, are you meeting the rules of your life in terms of your money, your relationships, the time you're spending with your family? You know, where are you at right now? And to know where you're at right now is to kind of look at, all right, what are some of these rules I've imposed on myself? So this doesn't always leave you with the best feeling after you do this first part. So we're going to dive into the next step, which would be your future self. So yes, you're going to have to dream a little bit. I know certain personality types don't like to think ahead. They want to only think about what's safe right now. But in reality, it's always been safe. You know, it's just thought patterns, and you can dream. And if you don't dream, people are going to fill your schedule for you. You're going to be living someone else's life if you don't take the time to think about what's important to you. And if you won't do it for you, do it for somebody you love, do it for your children, do it for, ideally, you'll do it for yourself. But myself included, I had to start out knowing my children, my sons, deserved a beautiful life. So even if I was questioning my own self-worth, I would at least do it for them. So dive deep and just kind of think about those expectations. And that's where we'll walk right into the next section.